fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and you have had the good fortune to tune into For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. We talk about them in the ways they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the happiness of your friends and families and pets and plants and everything about you, because we are all in this together. I mean, people talk about COVID, we're all in this together, and that's absolutely true, but we are all in the fight to preserve our ecosystems together too, whichever side we're on, which is the ironic thing, of course, because the people that are fighting to destroy our ecosystems, fighting for policies and technologies that wreck the environment, will suffer just as much as the people who are trying to preserve things. And I'm still broadcasting from Massachusetts. I'm still out here near Boston. And one nice thing, my family's been going on walks in the local area, and we had a very nice walk at some place called Wampatuck State Park just yesterday, which is a park that was originally ceded to the local government by an Indian chief named Wampatuck, and then it was used by people to extract resources from. People just took timber and grazed their animals there, and then it became part of, in World War II, the Navy took it over, and it was an ammunitions depot. And so now as you're walking through, there's all these abandoned bunkers that used to hold all kinds of weapons and stuff. And it was just a nice reminder that in the end, nature is going to win. I mean, even if we manage to wipe ourselves out, eventually, who knows what the time scale is, depending on how much damage there is, but eventually nature will prevail. And just looking at these bunkers, which were built to withstand bomb explosions and built to last hundreds of years, and that nature has covered them with moss and lichen, and there's trees growing out of them. It was nice. And another nice thing we did, we took a trip over to what they call P-Town, which is Provincetown. And Provincetown is a small city at the very end of Cape Cod. And I told my son there while we were visiting that that Provincetown is where the really, really wealthy people go to pretend that they're just regular folks. And it was a really nice place. We had a dinner at a nice restaurant off-season prices, so we could actually afford to eat. And there's a huge Cape Cod National Park there, and we walked out there, and there's a lighthouse at the very end of the Cape, and I could see just barely visible way out in the water, I could see wind turbines out there. And I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And it turns out there's really right now functioning in the U.S. only one offshore wind farm, and I was able to see it from this park. And the wind potential off of the east coast of the United States is incredible. It's estimated at 400 gigawatts, which is more than enough power for the entire East Coast. So we could shut down every nuke plant, every coal plant, every natural gas plant, every oil plant, and run just offshore wind. Unfortunately, what has happened in this area is that there's been a huge political backlash against wind. In fact, in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is just a little ways away, they actually are passing laws claiming that wind turbines are threats to the public health and banning them. And there was a proposed Martha's Vineyard wind farm, offshore wind farm, which had been fought for decades, and finally the people proposing it ran out of money. And what often happens at these battles for quote-unquote nature is that if you look at them, and the people making the arguments seem like they're regular citizens, but then when you dig a little deeper, you find out most of them have ties to the extractive industries. Most of them, if you look close, turns out they actually work for, let's say, nuclear power plants, or they work for the utility company that doesn't want wind or solar. And it's just a terrible thing, because we have to generate our power somehow. Somehow we're going to have to get our electricity. And yeah, you could see wind turbines, but that's the worst thing about them. They don't kill birds. That's a lie. It's been disproven many times. They don't cause cancer. That's a lie, and told by a well-known liar. And they're clean. They are really clean energy, and they could provide it indefinitely. Because we're not going to run out of wind the way we're going to run out of oil and natural gas eventually. So I just wanted to contrast the attitudes up here in Massachusetts and Plymouth and Cape Cod and off of Martha's Vineyard with Providence, Rhode Island, because the wind turbines that we have, the one offshore wind farm that we have in the United States is off of Providence, Rhode Island, and it just happened to be pushed by the Rhode Island Green Party, was one of the main backers of this wind farm. And it's producing power, clean power. I saw it. It was barely visible on the horizon. You did not destroy the view at all. And it's something we need to do. We need to be moving towards that. We need to get rid of these folks that are trying to protect the old systems, the old polluting systems that are literally destroying the planet for their own benefit. Often it's for their own benefit. And we need to get them out of power, and we need to get people into power who are going to put up the wind turbines and put up the solar panels. And that is one of the reasons I have my guests today. This is an unprecedented show, because we have both a live guest who will be calling in at 1:15, and we have a recorded interview. And the live guest is John Witte. He's been on the show before. He's the person who put the solar power system on my house. And right now he's working on a huge utility scale project in Illinois. So I wanted to talk to him about that. Then after that, we have an interview that I recorded. It was the interview I was hoping to do last week, but it was an interview with a fella from the Giniw Collective, who's up there in northern Minnesota, where protesters are trying to physically stop the construction of another tar sands pipeline, a tar sands pipeline that goes through that area and would destroy a lot of pristine wildlife. So, but before that, so we'll be going to John Witte in just a few minutes. Rebecca, are you there?
Sure.
Hey, welcome to the show, co-host Rebecca Wood.
Thanks. I'm awake, just not very much, that's all.
Oh, you're not. Is your co-host with you? Is Koga there?
He is. He's not awake at all. He curled up on his little blankie beside me and fell asleep.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty nice. So I'm sure Koga will wake up if anything important or exciting happens, though, and
there you go.
Maybe he'll
mostly
join the call.
If he gets to go walkie soon, mostly. Oh, I said the W word, but it's okay. He's still asleep.
Yeah, when we had dogs, we had to keep finding new words for the W word because they'd get all excited, and we got to the point
Can't seem to crack daily constitutional. That one confuses him to the point where he can't learn it. Too many syllables.
Daily constitutional, that was a good one. That lasted for a while with our dogs. That was almost a year till they got that one. But
you have super smart dogs.
We finally ran out of it, and we ran out on perambulation. when they figured out what perambulation means, we knew we were done. We stopped even trying to come up with alternative
sign
words
language. Next, you gotta learn American Sign Language after that.
They knew sign language. Yeah, they. In fact, dogs learn sign language more effectively than they learn the spoken words.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you could teach a dog, 100 signs, but they might not have a verbal vocabulary that big. But we use sign language in our household.
They use a lot of gesture and body language to convey things, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, in just a minute or so, we should be having our guest calling in, John Witte. He's on the line. Okay, that's great. Well, I think it's time to go to John Witte then. All right. John, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Joe.
All right. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
So, John, you're not a stranger to the show. This is the second time we've had you on. The last time you just finished putting 6 kilowatts of solar on my house, and now I understand you're working on a somewhat bigger system. Could you give us some details about the project you're working on? Where is it? How big is it? How many households would it power, etc.?
Yes, I'm working on a project in Illinois. It's 6 megawatts of solar. The inverter outputs is about 5 megawatts AC.
So literally 1,000 times bigger than the 6 kilowatt of solar that you put on my house.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. It covers about 30 acres of farmland in west central Illinois. Project started in October, and it's due to be completed next month.
Wow. 6 megawatts starting in October and finished in February. That's amazing. That really points out how wind and solar are the technologies that can go up quick enough to save us from the impending global warming crisis. So that's really encouraging. How many people are employed putting up a system this size?
There's approximately 60 direct construction jobs related to this project, and several other indirectly related to suppliers, delivery, things like that.
And those are pretty good paying jobs, I understand?
Yeah, they are. This project is a non-union project, so we are in a rural area of Illinois, and the pricing for labor in that area is less than what we'd see in the bigger cities, even throughout Ohio.
Yeah, that was one of the big disappointments of House Bill 6 here in Ohio, is that the unions came out in favor of House Bill 6. It really seems like they're kind of missing the renewable energy opportunity, because that's where the really good high-paying jobs would be. Instead, they focused on preserving the nuclear system, which we'll get off that. But would you say that the trend towards renewables is away and away from coal is accelerating.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. As a matter of fact, this project is being constructed right next to a decommissioned coal plant. And this is happening throughout Illinois, as it's going to continue to be in Ohio. For example, American Electric Power is decommissioning 7,000 megawatts of coal-fired power plants over the next few years. Probably half of that will be renewable energy, and probably half would be natural gas. So yes, we are seeing a big shift away from traditional central power generating stations.
Well, that's cool that you are literally on the grounds of a coal-fired plant installing solar. That's great. Does the coal-fired plant, is that property big enough to house all the solar, or is it spilled out into some of the surrounding territory?
Well, we're probably going to be constructing a very small part of the actual output of that system. So the solar system that we're building will be generating close to 7.5 million kilowatt hours a year, or 7,500 megawatt hours a year. And that would probably cover the energy consumption for 740 households.
So what kind of challenges does a project like this typically face?
Well, one of the biggest concerns that we have is finding contractors with experience. The Illinois' industry is growing so quickly. There's opportunities for new companies to get into the installation of solar energy systems. And that is why I'm on this job. I was brought in as a quality control officer and safety officer, helping a new electrical contractor, new to the industry contractor, get their feet wet on a project of this size, with their anticipation of making this a big part of their contracting business going forward.
Oh, yeah. I was kind of wondering how you ended up in Illinois from Ohio. So that's really encouraging to hear that new companies are still coming into the field. That would help with the pace. But I guess that Illinois is also helping with this trend, with this conversion. They have incentives there in Illinois for wind and solar. Could you tell us a little bit about that, how they impact cost and maybe encourage investment in Illinois?
Sure. Illinois Renewable Portfolio Standard is requiring 25% of energy produced in the state be from renewable energy sources by 2025. That's going to be a 1,700% increase in renewable energy systems over the next 5 years. So to get an example of how big this is, currently Illinois has about 50 gigawatts of solar energy on the grid. This new renewable portfolio standard will add about 115 gigawatts of new construction or under development as we speak. And much of the solar investment is tied to the incentives that were put in place to meet the requirements of the RPS. So in 2016, Illinois legislature passed the Future Energy Jobs Act, which is going to create hundreds of millions of new investment in renewable energy. So that increase is going to go from about 13 megawatts a year in 2017. It has jumped up to 106 megawatts a year in 2019. And as you can see, that large increase will just even get greater as we quickly approach the 2025 opportunity for solar. For example,
that's great. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. And I'm helping the general contractor and the electrical contractor on this job. An example of a small Indiana company that's been involved in the solar industry for about 8 years. They currently have 10 systems in the neighborhood of probably 25 megawatts of projects under construction or about to begin construction. So this is one example of what these incentives do for the solar industry and creating jobs.
Oh, that's great.
And that several years ago in Ohio, where we saw a great increase, 2010 to 2015, because of the RPS that they instituted back in 2008 in Ohio. As you know, that has come to a halt a couple years ago, and now the industry in Ohio is struggling, and we're seeing businesses that were primarily solar contractors having difficult times now in Ohio, and are reaching out to other parts of the country, other states where the incentives are still going strong. Illinois and Indiana are both really moving forward. But it sounds like Illinois is having an industry or a financing crunch that could slow things down temporarily.
Well, we're kind of moving backwards, actually. The dread, the evil, the House Bill 6 that we have talked about so much on this show, took those standards, those RPS standards that Ohio used to have, and it actually reduced them. It made them less. It actually reduced them to the point, pretty much the point where we already are. In other words, literally they legislated, we don't want any more than we've got already. And yeah, I mean, in some places it's still going forward because it turns out that economically, even without any kind of encouragement, it makes sense in a lot of areas. But there's no question that the policies of the state affect how much wind and solar goes in that state. And Ohio's we pretty much ran backwards as fast as we could get away with. So, well, thanks for the encouraging word from the front lines there, at least encouraging in Illinois, Indiana, and our surrounding states that are kind of leaving Ohio behind here. So there's a lot of talk about repealing House Bill 6 and putting some kind of coherent energy policy in its place. I'm guessing you'd be in favor of that, John. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. I was able to take advantage 5-10 years ago with those incentives to grow my business. And an example of what the incentives do for a project, the one in Illinois we're working on, they have 3 main incentives First of all, the federal investment tax credit, which has been reduced to 26% over from 30% a couple years ago, will continue to further reduce down to 22% and then go away entirely for residential and a very small 10% for commercial projects. But I understand that that 26% ITC has been extended for another couple years. So that was something that just was announced. So that will help. But in addition to the investment tax credit, Illinois utilities have a smart inverter rebate. And what that does is allows the utilities to communicate with the inverters on a private project, investment project, so they can control and use the solar energy system to their optimum advantage. And that smart inverter rebate is a one-time fee of $250 per kilowatt DC. So for our 6 megawatt project, that inverter rebate is approximately $1.5 million.
Wow, so that's the money the utility pays to the installer for putting in solar.
It pays to the developer or the owner of the system to allow them to communicate with their inverters, and at times will reduce the output of the system that they can use to sell and generate renewable energy credits. So for our project, it's estimated that the investment tax credit will be about $2 million. So we've got a reduction of $3.5 million from a project cost of maybe about $8 million. So those investments incentives will reduce the cost and to the investor by about 45%. That's just right up front in the first 5 years. In addition to those tax incentives, the Future Jobs Act had authorized the Illinois Power Authority to purchase SRECs, which are solar renewable energy credit, and that is just an additional benefit for generating green energy. And in this case, we'll probably be looking about $225,000 a year in SREC sales based on a $30 per megawatt hour SREC, and that varies depending on where you are in the state and how much solar is going to be required. Yeah. So that,
well, John, thanks so much, but I'm afraid we've run out of time here for the interview. But really appreciate all the good information here, and it's just sad to think that Ohio used to be a leader in this area, because we had pretty good at the time RPS, but if we can't lead, let's hope we can now at least follow the better example of the states around us. So thanks so much for coming on, John. Really appreciate it.
Sure, I'm glad to be here.
Okay, that was John Witte. And with John's departure, now that leaves some space for you folks. You can call in at 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065 to talk about anything you hear on the show and or any other environmental issue that you're interested in. And one thing that interests us is our sponsors and our advertisers. For Agreed Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats. They lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's a couple ways to get a hold of them. One is to simply pick up the phone and call 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. You can also go to their website. A lot of good information there, wcparks.org. And I recommend downloading the app. Go to the App Store, search for WC Parks. And of course, they're also on social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. And just go visit a park like we've been doing out here in Massachusetts. The Wood County parks are great. And our show is also brought to you by our sponsors. These are people who've gone to For a Green Future on patreon.com. That's Patreon. And once they found our site there on Patreon, they just signed up for a monthly donation to come out of their checking account. Hardly notice it because you get to set the amount that you want taken out, but we notice it and we really appreciate it. Well, yes, we do. But it really helps us bring the show in. So now, going on to our next interview, and the reason I wanted to get both these interviews in is because really they're both about energy, and we are able to make choices for the kind of energy and how we generate our energy. We have, in the solar projects, we've chosen a clean source of energy, but there's lots of people that are trying to push us to continue with the dirty energy. And so the people who are fighting this pipeline in northern Minnesota, this Line 3, are actually helping us choose the right kind of energy. So, Russell, I think we have the interview queued up. If you could go ahead and start that interview. And we're very happy to have you on. Could you please give our listeners some background about what's going on out there? Where is this happening exactly? What is Line 3? And why do you folks feel it's so important to stop it?
Yeah, for sure. So what Line 3 is there is a tar sands bitumen pipeline that stretches 1,000 miles all the way from Hart City, Alberta to Superior, Wisconsin. And right now, on the grounds, there's over 330 miles that are being built here in northern Minnesota. This pipeline is Enbridge's largest project and is going to take billions and billions of dollars. I think it's like $7.5 billion to build, which makes it Line 3 is the largest project in Enbridge history. And it's also like one of the largest crude oil pipelines in this continent. And if built, will carry nearly 1 million barrels of tar sand sludge all the way down from Hart City, Alberta, Canada to Superior, Wisconsin. When it lands in Superior, Wisconsin, it's at the Husky refinery, and a lot of this bitumen oil, it doesn't even actually get used here in the Western Hemisphere. The majority of it gets shipped all over the world to build plastics because it is one of the lowest grades of oil. And they know it's a dying field. And when we're talking about this proposed project, it is imperative to know that this crosses over 818 different types of wetlands. We're talking about thousands of acres of pristine wetlands. Not only is it crossing wild rice beds, but also crosses over 300 bodies of water. And there are 20 sites where they use a horizontal directional drill to bore under certain waterways. And so what we're seeing right now is that they're getting ready to prep and bore under the Mississippi River within the next week.
Wow. And there has been a lot of spills with tar sand pipelines, right? This is not just a theoretical danger to these waterways. It's an actual threat.
Yes, and Enbridge has the worst history with oil spills. Not only was there an oil spill from the Line 3 pipeline already here in Grand Rapids, but the largest inland oil spill was because of the Line 5 pipeline over in Michigan, in Kalamazoo. And that was, still to this day, you can find the bitumen in the soil samples. And I've been to Kalamazoo and checked out, the river that it tainted, and they're still dealing with cleanup to this day. Regardless of the situation, these pipelines companies will tell you that they have state-of-the-art technology. But one thing that they cannot deny is that even if they have state-of-the-art technology, all pipelines leak. Every single one has leaked. They warned us this back when the Dakota Access Pipeline was going on. We warned them and said, this pipeline will leak. And they said, there's state-of-the-art technology, that won't happen. And right when it was built, it happened within weeks of that. There was already a spill. And so we see this as a continuing pattern, that all pipelines leak.
Right. Now, this conflict on Line 3 didn't just pop up overnight, did it? I mean, could you give us some of the history? Some of the battles have been going on for years around this pipeline.
Yeah, so, I mean, when we're talking about Line 3, the legal process for Line 3 started about 6 years ago in the regulatory processes. But this was actually after the Sandpiper had been canceled. And so 7 years ago, Enbridge proposed the Sandpiper and the Alberta Clipper. And there was immense opposition for these to happen. And so once those were off the table, they came in with a replacement project, is what they call it. Because the lines that they have here are deteriorating and there are abnormalities. But this is not just a replacement project. This is a whole new corridor. They're going through territory they haven't even went. So when we're talking about, this fight, yeah, it didn't happen, 6 weeks ago when active construction started. There have been boots on the ground for several years fighting the destruction that's happening in front of our faces.
Now, I understand Winona LeDuc and, Ralph Nader's running mate in 2000 has been one of the leaders of the opposition to Line 3. What are some of the other groups and some of the other leaders that are part of the coalition trying to stop the pipeline?
Yes, as most people know, Winona LeDuc is the executive director of Honor the Earth, and they have recently opened the Water Protector Center in Palisades, Minnesota, where the land that's in trust there abuts the pipeline corridor. And so there's been a lot of work happening in that area, particularly by the Mississippi. I would like to, commend them for that space. For the other areas, there's actually been a lot of camps opening up. Red Lake just opened up a treaty camp on their treaty lands, and there are several other camps that are fighting this. I think when talking about the coalition that's stopping this, I would mention the Gitchigumi Scouts, who do MMIW work around the Twin Ports area in Duluth and Superior, Wisconsin. Camp McGeezy, that just started here in northern Minnesota and on the Fond du Lac Reservation. and there is a indigenous femme and two-spirit led collective called Giniw that is doing a lot of boots on the ground direct action work to stop this pipeline. Now we're working alongside a lot of different organizations like MN350, Sierra Club, and really hoping that we can garner support from the general public, because this pipeline is a direct threat to a lot of people's drinking water.
Okay, now you've had some pretty dramatic moments during this the standoff. Could you tell us about some of the things protesters have been doing to try to stop this pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, there has been a diversity of tactics that have been utilized here on the front lines in northern Minnesota. Whether it be through blockades, people physically locking themselves inside the pipes, locking down to equipment, stopping work, to praying and practicing treaty rights on these corridors. There has been an array of actions and demonstrations that have happened to stop this from coming through. Last Saturday, there was an event near Hill City, Minnesota, where it was upwards of 300 people showed up to this action called Rally for the Rivers. And to see the sheer volume of power that we had, we know that the Line 3 resistance is growing, and we can see it, right in front of our faces.
Oh, that's great. Now, just a general question. Would you say that continuing to develop fossil fuel infrastructure like this pipeline, even as global warming accelerates and climate disasters multiply, this actually represents a clear and present danger to our nation?
Yes. I definitely, it's actually, we're here in Minnesota, and the Governor Tim Walz has made so many promises about being a climate champion here, and direct quote has said, if Washington will not act on climate, we will. Minnesota will. And I do not understand how a person who has a climate plan his administration can allow this pipeline to go through. It is imperative that we stop this, because any climate mitigation plan is farce, and if it does not include us moving from fossil fuels. Now, you can talk green energy all you want, and you can start talking about carbon offset, but if we're not lowering our emissions, then we're not going to meet our goals by 2030 to ensure that the carbon emissions stay under 500 ppm. And once they do that, we have irreversible effects will happen. When we're talking about in 2019 being the hottest year on record, 2020 being the second hottest year on human record, storms, hurricanes, and disasters becoming more powerful than we have ever seen. I think that we need to be thinking more. We're in a life right now where we're using a lot of energy. And a lot of us here in the States are using so much, we're living so large that you don't see that very much around the world. Now, we use an average American uses about 20 carbon tons of CO2 per year, where there are places around the world that are using much less, but are already seeing the consequences of climate change in front of their face. And we can't continue to ignore the changes that we're seeing on the ground and around us, because even though in the global north we're seeing the climate change effects much later, I think it could be said that a lot of people are witnessing these things in front of their very eyes.
So what is the situation on the ground there in northern Minnesota right now?
So it has been about 6 weeks since they started active construction. And if everything goes as planned, we have about 4.5 months left of them building this pipeline. And a large chunk of it is in wetlands. And there is a moratorium that they're not allowed to work on wetlands because they're fragile when it's not frozen. So it is grind time right now for Enbridge, where they are trying to knock out all of the pipe that's on wetlands, because they will not be able to do it once the ground thaws. And I mean, realistically, their machines and the matting wouldn't even be able to get onto the wetlands if the ground was not frozen. And so, like I had said earlier, there are 20 sites where they're using the horizontal directional drill, and they have been prepping the drill pads these past couple weeks and moving in pipes and moving in the equipment to start drilling and boring under the Shell River, under the Mississippi River, under the Crow Wing River, under the Red River. And to see this destruction happening, it's really disheartening to see. And so I feel like there are some things that can be done, you know. The Biden administration could, if they chose to, do the same thing or a similar fashion of what Trump did the first day they got into office when they approved the Dakota Access Pipeline. They can do the reverse and ensure that the Dakota Access Pipeline is shut down, that KXL is shut down, and that Line 3 work is halted. They also have the authority to, their administration has the authority to revisit the 404 permits under the Clean Water Act. No, those are federal permits, and they have the authority to revoke those permits. Once they revoke the authority of the 404s, they will not be able to build this pipeline.
Well, let's hope Biden does this, because he's committed. He says he's committed to combating climate change, but as you point out, that if you do mitigation, but you continue to do the infrastructure and continue to build and use the pipelines and continue to take more carbon out of the ground, it's a losing battle. So we're just about out of time here. So is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners that we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, I just want to say that the U.S. government has a responsibility under federal law to honor the rights guaranteed to tribal members in their treaties. So when we're talking about this land here in northern Minnesota, it puts several treaty territories in jeopardy. And not only that, but this is one of the only places where there's wild rice found still. This pipeline does not benefit anybody here on this hemisphere, and it's going to harm people of the global south. We have an obligation to stop this pipeline, and as I see it, the regulatory process has failed us. Governor Walz has failed us, and so people are taking their power back, and they're not going to allow this pipeline to be built one way or another.
All right. And if people wanted to follow you folks on Facebook, How do you spell Giniw in terms of Giniw Collective?
Yeah, it's Giniw. Giniw Collective, and Giniw stands for Golden Eagle.
I didn't know that.
Anishinaabe.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you as well.
And, our prayers go towards your success in stopping this pipeline. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
And, because the fight that's going on there is actually a fight for you. It's a fight for us. It's a fight because the damage that would be caused by putting all this carbon from the Alberta tar sands into the air is almost incalculable, because we right now are just getting a taste of what's going on with climate change, with global warming. The effects we're feeling now is from carbon that was put into the air 100 years ago. And so every additional pound of carbon we put into the air is going to hurt our descendants. Almost, like I say, it's almost unimaginable how bad things are going to get if we keep doing this. So I wanted to do this show that kind of contrasted. We got the clean energy going up that's employing a lot of people, that's going to be powering households. And then we have the dirty energy that they're still trying to push through, as if doing both at once somehow is okay, that somehow you can get rid of the bad by doing the good. But no, you have to stop doing the bad too. Or else
Joe?
Hey, Rebecca, how are you doing?
Hi there. Did you actually say the name of that last interviewee?
Oh, his name? No, I did not get his name. Actually, he as part of the Giniw Collective, he gave me his Giniw Collective name, which is
fair enough.
Which is not his quote unquote Christian name. So no, we don't have his name. But
I was wondering because I miss stuff sometimes. ADD plus sleep deprivation.
yeah. No, it's a pretty sensitive interview. You've always got to balance the anonymity of your source. You have to protect journalists have to protect their sources, and so I can't.
Well, we all know there's been uneven ways in which laws are enforced versus the left and the right in America right now.
and this really isn't a left-right question. This is an environmental, an eco question versus a non-eco question. And environmentalists have been unfairly targeted by both
they
left
look at
and
us as the
right-wing
left,
governments.
whether we think of ourselves as left or not.
Yeah, right, exactly. Because environmentalists have been persecuted by both left-wing and right-wing governments all over the world. It's not.
Wow.
It's not a left-right question. It's a survival question, the way I see it. So, well, we're just about out of time already, Rebecca. This is the first time I had tried to do two interviews in one show like this, and I kind of
victim of your own success, Joe.
What?
Victim of your own success.
I gotta say, it was one of the easiest shows for me I've ever done.
There you go.
That was kind of nice.
Everybody else did the talking.
Yeah, and next week, Rebecca, I understand you're gonna enlighten us as to the difference between sequoias and redwoods, right?
Yeah, I could use another week to figure that out.
Well, you got it. All right, folks. Well,
all right.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And it's been a pleasure, as always. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
Bye-bye.
And I do believe it's time we was done.